everyone, myself Afsha, high school teacher and English lecturer at Elizabeth High School and Junior College. Welcome back to my class. I hope you all remember that in our previous class we have completed the unit 5 of our class 10, right? Now let us proceed towards unit 6 and you can go through the face sheet and you can see that the theme of our lesson is biodiversity, that is the variations in the environment. It means that our theme is something related to environment, and in that we will be proceeding towards the part A, that is environment. Okay, it is an interview actually with who have taken and etc. we will come to know later. At first let us try to find out the source, right? The source of this interview is internet. Okay, no writer or narrator is there, but the source here is the internet. Now let us begin. It is an interview with Wangari Maathai, environmental activist and Nobel Prize winner. So who is she? An environmental activist and a Nobel Prize winner. Who is taking the interview here? NHK Radio. So it is the interview taken by NHK Radio to Wangari Maathai, who was an environmental activist and was a Nobel Prize winner. Now let us begin. Wangari Maathai started the Green Belt movement and also fought for equal rights for women in Africa. She is the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Read the excerpts from her interview with NHK Radio Japan. So she belonged to Africa actually. She was an African. Okay, and she was the first lady to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, this interview taken by NHK Radio was organized in Japan. She also fought for the equal rights of women in Africa. So she was not only an environmental activist, but we can also say that she was a social activist. Now let us proceed. NHK Radio. How did you become aware of the environment? So here the NHK Radio is questioning to Wangari Maathai that how did she become aware of the environment? So let us see what was her reply to this. Wangari Maathai. From the time we started, we were trying to respond to the basic needs of people in the rural areas, and people were asking for clean drinking water, for food, for energy, which is mostly firewood, for building material, for fodder for the animals. So what did she reply? From the time we started, from the time we began, right, we are trying to respond to the basic needs of the people in the rural areas, right, basic requirements of the people in the rural areas. So what they came to know at last, that people were only asking for clean drinking water, right, proper food to eat, and for energy they were asking the firewood, right, by burning that they will gain energy obviously. Then for building material, for fodder for the animals. What did you conclude from this? It means that they are asking the things that are completely related to environment, right, and all this come from the land. So we knew that what the people in the rural areas were asking for had to do with the environment. They did not have those things because the environment was degraded. So from the very beginning we understood that we have to rehabilitate the environment. So what did she say? We came to know very sooner that the people asking the things that are only related to environment, and it is happening because the environment has been degraded, right, has been destroyed. So from the very beginning, from that time itself, we understood that we have to improve our environment, we can say. We have to save our environment. The forested mountains were the source of water and the source of rain. So when you deforest, you cause a shortage of water and a change of rainfall patterns, and therefore people are not able to get food and water. So now what did she continue? The forested mountains, the mountains that are full of forest, full of trees, were the source of water and the source of rain, right? Because from the trees only the rain will fall on the earth, right? So when you deforest, when you cut the trees, you cause a shortage of water and a change of rainfall patterns, right? So that will ultimately cause a damage to the people's life by making the scarcity of water and food. Therefore, in order for them to have a good environment that can sustain their livelihoods, it is important to have a government that accounts to them, that protects them, that protects their interest, that is concerned about their life. So what did she said now? Therefore, in order to have good environment, right, that can sustain, that can maintain their livelihoods, it is important to have a government that is responsible for their lives, that is responsible to protect them, right, to protect their interest, and that is concerned about their lives, we can say. Again, NHK Radio asked, how is peace connected to good environment? What is the relation between peace and good environment? To this, let us see what did she replied. Who? Wangari Maathai. Many wars that are fought in the world are fought over natural resources. Right? So what did now she is explaining the relation between a good environment and peace. So what did she started? She said that many wars in the world are fought for the natural resources only. Some wars are fought because the environment is so degraded that it is not able to support communities, and so they fight over the little that is left. So one reason for which the wars will be happening is because of the degradation of the environment. What will happen? That will not be able to, the area or a country will not be able to support the communities. So they fight over the little that is left, right? Others are fought because some people want to take a lot of the resources. And what is the other reason for the wars to take place? Because some countries want extra resources to control them and to keep many other people out. So that is the other reason for which the wars will take place usually. Now whether this happens at the national level or at the regional level or even at the global level, sooner or later there is discontent, and when that discontent is strong enough, there is conflict. So good management of the natural resources, equitable distribution of these resources is important for peace. So now whether this happens at the national level or the regional level, right? The people of the national level are fighting or the regional level are fighting, right? Or at the global level we can say, if the whole world is fighting for the resources also, sooner or later there is discontent, right? And when that discontent is strong enough, there is a conflict. The war will begin finally, just from the basic fights we can say. So good management of the natural resources is very important for peace. At the same time, good management of the natural resources is not possible if you do not have democratic space, respect for human beings, respect for human rights, giving other people dignity. So it will also have an ultimate influence on the environment. Respecting each other, respecting each and every person of our community or our country we can say, and having a democratic space. What is the meaning of democracy? Where the government will be for the people, of the people and to the people, right? There is no kingship. So democracy means where the people will be having full of rights to live their life. So that will also play a key role in protecting our environment. That is why the three themes are related, like the African stool with 3 legs and the basin on which you sit. The 3 legs on leg is peace. So one leg is peace, the other leg is good governance, the third leg is sustainable management of resources. When you have those 3 legs, now you can put the basin, which is development. And if you try to balance that stool without those 3, it won't happen. So here she gave an example, right? The 3 themes are related, like the African stool, right? Here the first element that she is taking is a stool. And the second element that she is taking here is the 3 legs. And the third one is a basin. And further, she classified the 3 legs into 3 categories, right? As she is taking 3 legs here, so those 3 legs were referred to 3 things. The first leg is peace. The second leg is good governance. And the third leg is sustainable management of resources. So these are the 3 legs on which if you fix a basin, then we can arrange the stool in a proper way. Alright, so she is just giving the example. To maintain the proper environment, to protect our environment, to protect our country, we need 3 legs, that is the peace, good governance, and the last but not the least is sustainable management of resources. See how good example she have chosen to explain. We have not shared our resources equitably. We have allowed some people, especially those in power, to acquire a lot at the expenses of the majority, and we have also engaged in conflict. So this was all her words, right? Now the NHK radio continued. What was the environment like when you were young and how did you go about saving it? Right? So what was its question now? How was the environment when you were very young and how did you go about saving it? How come it struck your mind to save the environment? To this she replied, when I was a child, which is almost more than 50 years ago, the environment was very pristine, very beautiful and very green. We were a British colony and the British government at that time started to clear cut the indigenous forest in our forested mountains because they wanted to establish commercial plantations of exotic species of trees such as the pines. So what did she reply now? When I was a child, it was around 50 years back, right? We were having a very beautiful and green environment, a fresh environment where we used to live. But later on, as they were living in a British colony, the British government at that time started to deforest, right? Started the deforestation in order to establish commercial plantations. What is the meaning of commercial? That will have some income, that will bring some income. Right? So they started some commercial plantations of exotic species of trees such as the pines from the northern hemisphere and the eucalyptus from Australia. So these were the examples, right, that she has given, right, for the commercial species that were grown in their area. That is the pines from the northern hemisphere and the eucalyptus from Australia. I hope you all know about the eucalyptus oil. That is a very good commercial product actually. These trees are very nice. They grow tall and they grow very fast. But as they grow, they destroy all the local biological diversity. All the flora and fauna disappeared. So although we were getting commercial timber for the growing timber industry, we also destroyed our local flora and fauna. So what was the effect of that eucalyptus and pines? They were having a very bad influence on the local flora and fauna, that is plants and animals, right? On one hand, they were getting a good commercial value from those plants, but on the other hand, they were destroying their own local plants and animals, that is flora and fauna. As a result, these forests, which were the water towers, were no longer able to contain the water. So when the rains fell, the water ran downstream and ended up in the lakes and ocean instead of going down into the underground reservoir so that it could come back to us in the form of rivers. So what did she said now? As a result, what happened? These forests, which were the water towers, which were very good at storing waters, were no longer able to contain them, right? Were no longer able to store the water. So when the rains fell, so what happened now? Whenever the rain was falling, the water ran downstream and ended up mixing in the lakes and oceans, right? Instead of settling down in the underground. So before what was the common thing actually? Whenever it used to rain, the water used to get saved inside the water. But now the land lost its ability to store the water. Right? That is what the reason it was flowing in the lakes and oceans because of the commercial trees that they have grown in their area. We lost our local biological diversity, so that's a lot of damage to our environment. So what happened? They lost their biological diversity, so that is what the reason it was a great loss to their environment. That is why in the year 1975, at the very first UN conference for women in Mexico, many of the women were saying, we need food, we need water, we need clean drinking water, we need fodder for our animals. And I was wondering what was happened. These are things that were there 20 years ago when I was a child. The environment had changed and that's when I started this campaign to restore the vegetation and to restore the land and to rehabilitate the forest. So what happened now? In the year 1975, at a very first UN conference, United Nations conference was held. So there, the women were complaining about the scarcity of food, the fresh drinking water and etc. So she was wondering, right, what is all happening here? Because before 20 years, it was all there in a good sufficient amount. But why? Why this is happening now? From that time, she got concerned about the environment and she decided to start a campaign to restore the vegetation, to restore the forest, right, or to rehabilitate the environment, we can say. Now NHK Radio was asking, what happened when you started working with the women? To this she replied, well, the first time when I told them, let us plant trees, the woman said they did not know how to plant trees. So how did she begin? She took a very initiative step by just planting the trees. Right? So at first when she informed the woman to plant trees, their response was that they don't know how to plant trees. So I asked the foresters to come and teach them. But they were very complicated. They are professionals. It became very complicated for ordinary illiterate women. So I told the woman, we shall use our common sense and just do what we do with our other seeds. So what happened now? When the woman over there said that they don't know how to plant trees, then this great lady, we can say Wangari Maathai, requested the forest officials to teach them how to plant trees. As they were the professionals, they taught them in a very complicated way that was very difficult for the illiterate woman to understand, right? On seeing this, again this lady explained the other woman to use their common sense and just plant the trees and do the things with the seeds as we do in our regular lives. Women work on the farms. They are the ones who plant. They are the ones who cultivate. They are the ones who produce food. So I told them that seeds of trees are like any other seeds. So as the woman at that time were very good at agriculture, so she explained that the seeds of the trees are also same as the seeds in the farm will be. So if they were to treat these tree seeds the same way they treat other seeds of food crops, there is no difference. I told them to look for old broken pots even and put the seeds there. They will germinate and they will know these are the seedlings from the seeds. They planted and we gave them plastic bags to be able to put those seedlings and to nurture them, and when they were about half a meter long, then they could go and transplant them on their farms. So what happened now? So she started explaining them, right, giving them counselings how they have to plant the trees. She said that at first you just have to bury the seeds in the soil and you have to just water them regularly, right, and she also gave them the plastic bags so that when the tree will grow a little bit, right, to a half meter we can say, then they can transfer those plants into those bags, right, and they can travel to their fields, to their farms, and they can grow those trees over there. In the beginning, it was difficult, but they soon gained confidence and they became very competent foresters. So I call them foresters without diplomas. So what happened? At the beginning, it was very difficult for them, but very soon they got the confidence, right? And she started calling them foresters without diplomas, that is without degrees. NHK Radio, why do you think they responded so well to your message? What might be the reason that they have responded very well? To this she replied, it was a need. When the woman said they needed firewood and building material, we responded to that need. Plant trees, then you will have trees for firewood. In the tropics, trees grow very fast. In 5 to 10 years, these trees serve as firewood, as building materials. So what happened? What did she reply? They are responding me very properly because they are in need. They need a firewood here, right, for their livelihood. So she explained them that within 5 to 10 years your plants will surely grow in big trees, right, then you will easily get the firewood. So they gave a proper response. Once we have planted those trees, we saw the need for them to understand why we have to have good governance. So it became important to give them civic education so that they could understand how we govern ourselves, why we govern ourselves the way we govern ourselves, why we are managing our environment the way we are managing it. Because we were dealing with the environment, we gave them education both in civics and also in environment. That made them understand clearly why they should take up the responsibility of protecting the environment, that it was not the responsibility of the government or the responsibility of somebody else to come and rehabilitate their environment on their own land. It's their responsibility. Then further what she did, she started educating the women about the importance of protecting the environment, right? Because of education only, they came to know that it is their whole and sole responsibility to protect their environment, right? Rather than blaming on the government or some other officials, we have to understand that it is our responsibility, our duty to protect our surrounding, to protect our environment and to reserve our natural resources for our future use, we can say. Then NHK Radio asked, what transformation did you see? What was the result of all these things? One of the bigger transformations that I saw was that ability of an ordinary illiterate woman to get to understand and to be able to plant trees that in 5 or 10 years became big trees, and she was able to cut them and be able to give herself energy, to be able to sell those trees and give herself an income, to be able to feel confident that she had done something for herself. That sense of pride, sense of dignity, and that they are not begging, that they are not doing things for themselves was very empowering. That transformation was very powerful. So the main transformation that she noticed was the empowerment of the woman. The way the women were getting confident, right? They were improving financially, socially and mentally as well. So that was a very great achievement, we can say, right? The other is the transformation of the landscape. The first one was the empowerment of the woman, and now the second achievement or the second main transformation was the transformation of the landscape. Places where there was dust, there are no more dust now. There are trees, even birds and rabbits. They come back and they make the environment very beautiful. There is shade, and sometimes even dry springs come back because the water is not running. The water is going into the ground. Very profound transformation. So it was a very good transformation because those lands that was having no plants on that, right? Now it has been changed, it has been converted to a very beautiful garden with full of trees, with full of birds and insects and small animals like rabbits, and rain was again sufficient, right? So that was a very good transformation and a very big achievement. And the other transformation that I saw was the willingness of the people to fight for their rights, right? Now the third one is willingness of the people to fight for their rights. Now people understood the importance of their rights and responsibilities actually. To decide that they have a right to a good clean environment, to decide that they will fight for their forest, they will protect their forest, and they will not allow corrupt leaders to take their public land. So there was a very good change in the people's mentality, that they came to know that they are not going to leave their environment for the sake of the corrupt leaders. They are going to protect their environment, their forest and etc. by themselves. Now NHK Radio, how do you think you can influence the rest of Africa? So you have influenced just a small place now. How do you think that you are going to influence the rest of Africa? To this she replied, our efforts will inspire other people to stop wasting their resources and their youth in wars and instead engage in creating a peaceful environment, more peaceful states. So we will inspire the other places because we are busy in making the youth to concentrate, to engage themselves in planting trees and making our environment very beautiful, rather than going and involving themselves in the wars. I am very happy about the fact that now in Africa you see a new efforts of ensuring that Africans engage in dialogue, that they invest in peaceful negotiations for conflicts, that we manage our environment. We must restore our environment and try to ensure that we do not fight, because we are all allowing the environment, especially the land, to be degraded, and then we fight over agricultural land and grazing land. I see a lot of hope in what is happening in Somalia, what is happening in the Sudan, what is happening in West Africa. I see a lot of African leaders encouraging each other to engage in dialogue. So what she added here, she is saying that I am already able to see the changes that is taking place in Sudan, the Somalia and West Africa. The leaders over there are also engaged in dialogues of preserving our environment, right? They are very much inspired by us, and we have made a very great impact on them. Again, NHK Radio was asking, what is the one thing we can do? What is the main thing that we need to do in our lives? To this, WM, that is Wangari Maathai, replied, for me, my greatest activity is to plant a tree. I think that a tree is a wonderful symbol for the environment, and we plant a tree, we plant hope. We plant the future for ourselves, for our children, for the birds. We plant something that will last long after we are gone. So what did she reply? The only thing that we need to do in our lives, the most important one, is that to plant a tree. Because when we plant a single tree, we plant a hope, we plant a future for our children, and we plant something that will last longer when we leave this world, right? So see how good thought she was having in her mind, right? She was a very responsible and a very concerned lady, right, who was having a very human nature. Okay, I hope you all have understood this topic. Let us continue in our next class. Thank you.